All right, I'll go back to it. Sorry, I'm losing my mind.
The origin of the species.
Origin. Origin of the species. Thank you. And John Stuart Mill's book on liberty were published in the same year, 1859, I think. 1859. By the way, let me point out that Harriet Taylor, who was a good friend, a good family friend of John Stuart Mill, and apparently he had a good relationship with her while she was married to her husband, but when her husband died, they got married. And Harriet Taylor had a lot of impact on John Stuart Mill. In fact, Harriet Taylor wrote a book called The Enfranchisement of Women about 11 years before she and John Stuart Mill wrote their book on women. And there's another author, Mary Wollstonecraft, that I should mention also. And she's considered to be really one of the leaders of, yes, her daughter, by the way, was the author of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley. What wasn't it, Mary Shelley? Yeah, Mary Wollstone Shelley, right? It's her daughter, and she's the one that wrote the Gothic novel Frankenstein, which is considered romanticism. But Mary Wollstonecraft wrote a book on the vindication of the rights of women. So you're looking at a milieu where this is in vogue. And yes, England is the first to move in that direction, especially against slavery, by the way. So the idea that the United States was where slavery was really banned or made illegal is false. England was the first to do that. But the intensity of the education that his father was giving him had him go insane, roughly around early 20s. And at that point, he ended up discovering Romanticism. Collingwood, I think, was one of the British authors who actually spent time living in Weimar with the Magnificent Rebels, etc., and spoke German well enough and translated a lot of their ideas. And those ideas impacted him to the extent that he once again was able to be sane. So he had a sense of purpose again, and it came from that additional content added on to the teachings of Jeremy Bentham and his father, so that he didn't just have this utilitarian view, but instead also added an idea that, well, there had to be an elite, and the elite deserved more than everybody else. You can't just have everybody all being treated equally. There's this, remember, ever since Plato, we've had this philosophical view of the classes of society being split into groups, hierarchical sort of groups. So even though Mill is utilitarian, he does believe that you have individuals that deserve more of the state's money because their needs are actually more expensive and deserve it. By the way, I'll mention John Rawls. John Rawls is a utilitarian, American utilitarian. And if you're going to study law, you'll get 2 graduate courses based on John Rawls, one of them on his theory of justice, and the other on his political liberalism. And the first one, the theory of justice, is where Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Rousseau all left off, right? We have this social contract. Well, okay, so we need an date on the social contract, and the trouble with the social contract is, from a utilitarian perspective, well, what about you have all these individuals? If you're going to make a law, you need to make sure that that law helps the individuals in the society that have the least. Don't write laws that just increase the rich people's money, like we're doing today.
Well, isn't that what zero cash bail reforms are kind of built on? John Rawls?
Which ones?
Zero cash bail reform?
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, because they're saying like, why would you impose big amounts on people that can't afford it?
But justice should be fair.
I mean, I think that's what they're all based on.
And how do you figure out what's fair? And his argument is that, well, we have to put this veil of ignorance over our heads so that we don't know where we are in society, so that we don't pass laws that are our benefit. Instead, we pass laws that are rationally beneficial to the society at large. That was his first book, Theory of Justice, so I just saved you one graduate course. The second one is the one that he wrote following the criticisms of that, The Veil of Justice. And political liberalism is a little bit more ambiguous, but so the original position in the Theory of Justice, remember Hobbes says in the original position it's a dog-eat-dog world where everybody's fighting everyone else, and life is nasty, brutish, and short. And so you end up then needing to form a social contract to get out of that, right? Locke argues that the original position is everybody grows up in a family and mom loves you and tries to keep everything ordered and so on, but she can't handle all the complexities that eventually develop, and as a result we need to create a society, but we want that society to be based on a fairness for everyone. And by the way, if the king gets out of line, we can sack him, right? That kind of thing. Rousseau, remember, argues that in the state of nature, everything is ideal. And when we create society and we create a government, we create corruption. And so the best thing for us is to not have any government at all. And France did try that in 1789 and ended up in the Bloody Terror. So it didn't work. But he's kind of trying to update the original position, and so what we have to do is put this veil on our, this is a thought experiment. You put a veil over your head, etc. Well, that's not. But Political Liberalism is the second book. Important things with respect to John Stuart Mill. He does follow Jeremy Bentham, who utilitarian. And by the way, the British today still call their philosophy utilitarianism. And an interesting question that I pose: what's the difference between utilitarianism and pragmatism? Because we think of ourselves as American pragmatists, and pragmatism and utility have an awful lot in common. I've heard that the main difference between them is that utilitarianism is a morality, whereas pragmatism, our American philosophy, is practical in nature and applies to everything, not just morality.
Well, utilitarian, yeah, it's more subjective.
Hedonistic calculus, governmental reforms to help the poor. He and his contemporaries, remember especially the author Charles Dickens was a contemporary of his. And if you think about the novels and the stories of Charles Dickens, Christmas Carol, etc., they're all focused on how to deal with the problem of poor people, etc. So I'll quit at this, I guess, because everybody has to go. But the quiz question for today was based on utility. How would a utilitarian deal with the COVID situation? And, you know, what I would basically say is that the United States, at least, and lots of other countries actually all tried to follow utilitarian principles in order to deal with COVID.
Yeah, unilaterally, I'll give you that. What I tell you, the only
The
one.
trouble is, we don't know what's really the best way to do that.
The best example though of utilitarianism actually being used and the way it's supposed to be used is the grounds of all things on that one.
I'd still have a drawer full of face masks.
Oh, no,
Keep one in
sorry,
each car. I got all my shots, at least until that, whole business.
So, it says you have not read it. Are you ready?
Can you resend it to me?
Sure.
Because I've read every. I'll have to look. Because all I can think is when the internet went down in my house, that screwed up that time period.
This is the Library of Congress.
Yeah. I've been in there.
This is us with Lisa Murkowski at the Capitol.
Oh.
This is us sleeping in the Library of Congress. That's me over there. My buddy took a picture. Isn't that crazy?
That was so man.
I volunteered to go.
Well, still, the whole thing was.
Remember when it came out? Nobody's sleeping in parking garages. Do you remember that when that came out? I took a picture of this. When Lisa Murkowski and her aide came in. I said, what do you mean? This is us sleeping in parking garages. With exhaust fumes and everything from cars. We were out of DC in 2 days later because of our governor.
That was nice of her.
No, she wasn't the governor. You know who the
Oh.
governor is?
You mean Senator?
No, governor.
Oh, the governor.
Governor controls National Guard.
Oh, yeah.